Hey, Wes, welcome to the show.
Hey, how are you, Simon? Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
No, mate, thank you for making the time. We really appreciate it and very looking forward to hearing your story. So, um, mate, tell us a little bit about high level marketing.
Yeah, so High Level Marketing, we are a digital marketing company. So founded the company back in 2009. Simple solution being that, the search engines were kind of coming online. Things were starting to happen digitally. And I just found an opportunity to help small businesses with their website and their digital marketing. So it was really kind of an up and coming thing. Nobody really knew where the market was headed. So, I think I was 24, 25 at the time. I'm like, well, people will take me serious at this age in tech, with websites and that kind of thing. So it started there just to create a solution for small to mid-sized companies. Again, I kind of looked at the market and said, hey, like every business needs a website and every business needs digital marketing. So it seemed like a really good opportunity and the timing worked out perfect.
Yeah, awesome. Was there something that kind of led you to kind of getting into marketing, or was it just that you kind of had this moment and saw the opportunity?
Yeah, I've always been I've always had a strong sales background, and I actually was moonlighting after school for a web company from a gentleman from high school, and I just love the idea around meeting. Like you could meet 10 lawyers, but they all did business a little bit different, and that was really interesting to me. And I just loved being around entrepreneur like minded individuals. So
Yeah.
that was a really great thing for me just to and everybody just had so many questions. They didn't know where to go. And I'm like, this is kind of easy for me. Like, it's an easy thing for me to communicate and kind of connect people. And so it kind of just started there and kind of morphed into what it is today.
Yeah, cool. I had my own business back in 2009 as well. And I must say, I remember talking to all sorts of marketing experts about, well, this whole SEO thing and pay-per-click was becoming this new term. And it was kind of like the dark arts of marketing, it was this black box of mystery, and so
Sure.
I can see why, your business has done so well. It's just, there's the technology is moving so fast, everything's evolving. You're good at building and selling widgets, for example. We can't be experts at everything, right?
Yeah, I think in the marketplace, even at the time and even today, there's a lot of marketing companies. There's a lot of web companies out there, but trust, building the trust and transparency just really didn't exist. Every customer, every prospect I was talking to, they were upset with their marketing company. They nobody set any expectations. They're spending money and they're not, to them, they're not getting anything in return. So, I saw it as a big opportunity, and it's still a big opportunity today.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it's where are we in the life cycle? I mean, I think everybody's gotten onto the idea that a website's a requirement many years ago, right? I mean, it's all these sort of other things that are becoming really common terminology, right? I mean, I must admit, I still go out there and I still see businesses that don't have CRMs, and I'm like, what? How can you not have a CRM, right? Like, whereas go back 10 years and the term CRM wasn't all that common either.
Yeah, if you would ask me 10 years ago where I'd be in 10 years, I would have thought that, hey, within 5 years, like we're just not going to be able to get more business. And it couldn't be further than the opposite of that now. I mean, we're busier now than we've ever been in our entire history.
Yeah, that's cool. Congratulations. So you founded the company in 2009 on your own. Did you have a business partner? What did that look like?
Yeah, so I had an experience with this a local web company, and one of the challenges was every customer I brought to the table, they did a terrible job from a fulfillment perspective. So I sort of watched this company flounder around, and I'm like, it's you have choices, and you can either do a good job or a bad job, and they both take hard work. And I'm like, there's got to be an easier way. So I took one of the developers and I created my own platform. Did that for a couple years. Had some difficulty finding the right type of software guy to kind of help drive it forward, right? So everything I did was so software dependent, and I don't really know web that well. I know the sales and the ops and how to kind of grow, but I found my partner. He actually took him on as a client, and he was a web manager at a large local wireless chain, and he was the web manager there. He had one foot out the door. Long story short, it was like, hey, let's come together. Why don't we just come together, 50-50 business partners, and let's just grow this thing. And we kind of had a shared vision, and yeah, we started and took off from there. So we weren't friends beforehand, and we were sort of like a really good yin and yang. So later through our career, about 7 years into our business relationship, we really we invested in EOS. I don't know if you're familiar with EOS, the Entrepreneur Operating System. So it just kind of like we complemented each other so well. We weren't stepping on each other's toes and crashing in each other's lanes. We were just like, let's focus and grow the organization. So it worked out really well.
Nice. I'm curious that initial stage of the relationship, it's a challenging one, right? I mean, I see people who go into business with friends and that kind of can turn out badly. And other ways it turns out great because they knew each other and they knew each other's strengths and weaknesses and they were kind of cool with it. I mean, I'm curious as to how you felt at the time. I mean, I know sometimes with startups, you're like, well, it's a startup and we're not really got a lot to lose here. And so maybe the risk doesn't appear to be too big, but picking a business partner can be the make or break, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, one of the things that kind of attracted me to him is he had a custom CRM and a custom, like basically at the time, there's like Joomla, sort of like a WordPress, like a web platform. He had that himself. He built something and he was talking to me about like he created it so like his mom could go in there and manage a website, which I thought was very interesting at the time. And what I soon learned about him, he had a handful of clients and they were all upset because he wasn't able to fulfill on the customer service side. I knew he was a great software guy and a great programmer, which usually means those types aren't typically great on the customer service and following up. So I kind of saw that as an opportunity to say, look, I have all these customers and I need fulfillment and I need somebody who I can count on and grow with and just go crazy as an entrepreneur. And he had these clients and he's like, well, I think they're happy, but I haven't returned their phone call in a couple of weeks. And I'm like, holy cow. So it just sort of, I knew that the relationship was like, he was very specific on technology and I wasn't. I didn't care. I'm like, here's a really smart guy that can really own this side of it. And it's equally as important as the operation and the scalability of the sales and the customers and all that. So it was sort of like, let's divide and conquer and see what happens. And, through serendipity, I mean, we had each gone through our own iteration of like trying different things ourselves, doing deals with other people, and none of them worked. And when we got together, like something just clicked where, we were just able to go. And I think it helped that, quite frankly, that we didn't know each other or we weren't friends, because the focus was like, I mean, to be honest, at back in 2009, it's let's make as much money as possible. Like, let's just make a ton of cash. And it was kind of, it's cool to see the evolution of where we went for the last 11 and a half, 12 years from that.
Yeah, the relationship evolves and takes on its own life, right? That's cool. Did you guys, out of interest, I mean, our core business, exit advisory group, we help people with exit strategies and we do business sales acquisition, all that sort of stuff. And I'm always interested, seeing how business relationships form and evolve. And I'm curious, not a lot of people necessarily start with the end in mind. I know when I was 20 something or other, I certainly wasn't starting things with the end in mind. It's, as you say, you're plowing forward for things. Yeah. I'm curious though, did you ever have a discussion in the early days about where do we go?
We always had like, and we were in lockstep about that. I mean, we always had this vision of like, one day we're just going to be able to sell this company and it'll be like our last hurrah. Yeah. So we would always go back to that. And quite honestly, like as we grew the company, he and I could always go in a room together and we'd look at each other and be like, what the hell is going on? Like, we have to stop and like, we could have real conversations with each other. Cause I mean, up last year, I mean, we had about 50 employees, a leadership team, and we fully implemented EOS. So we have like, it's a real business, a real structure. I mean, we're just two entrepreneurs that happen to say, hey, let's just do this together. Now all of a sudden it's like, we've got 50 people and there's millions of dollars and all these decisions are happening. So we would always kind of like reminisce and talk about, hey, this, and I was always very bullish on that. And I remember very early on just thinking in the back of my mind, like, by the time I'm 40, I kind of pictured myself being out, because I never thought I would have a 10-year run. I just didn't think it was possible. I mean, I don't know what this odds or the statistics are about, but businesses failing. And, I just never dwelled on that. But to be honest with you, what actually happened, which led to this acquisition 7 months ago, was the whole mindset that, my partner kind of waved that white flag a little burnt out. And he said, hey, if I had X amount of dollars, I might really tap out right now. And that stuck with me through COVID. And, I'm a visionary guy. Like, when things get in my head or I see things and I make things happen. And sure enough, he planted that seed and the perfect storm and timing. And that's exactly what we did. So,
yeah, it's cool. It's, we can unpack this perhaps a little bit if we've got the time, but it's been an interesting period through COVID and looking at all the M&A deals going on, the amount of capital sloshing around in the economy. It's been a fascinating time full of counterintuitive outcomes, I'll say. But So that's cool. So you guys actually had a conversation around, well, the end game looks like a sale eventually, and I don't know if you had a number in mind, but while you were traveling along this journey, did you ever start thinking about what that looked like?
I think as business owners, and you always hear of like multipliers of EBITDA, or like somebody watches Shark Tank. The reality is like that's what I was always thinking. But then when I actually got into it and started to really understand multipliers and true EBITDA and add backs and reality, like that kind of set in. So like as we started to have the discussions, I mean, what we did in this transaction is sort of a two-step process. So we actually didn't sell the entire company. And what we did is we rolled that into the new entity, of which is still my company, High Level Marketing. And so really it was a scale play.
Yes.
We realized that in order to get to the next level, we have to move from an entrepreneurial ran company to a professionally managed. And I'm an entrepreneur. I was CEO of my company because, quite frankly, like I don't know if anybody could take it out of my hands. But in my heart of hearts, like I thought I was doing a good job. But I think as a leader, as a CEO and an entrepreneur, I was my biggest critic, and I was really hard on myself, questioning my own ability. Like, we're only doing 6.5 million. We should be at 10 million. Like maybe it's me. Maybe I need to get a real guy in here. But the opportunity for like the next phase was either take capital and inject capital and let's just keep doing what we're doing, or align ourselves with a strategic partner who's doing the same type of work we are. And that's essentially what we did. So really the play was, if we can take some chips off the table today, but then also really work on the second swing, the second bite, that was really motivating for us. And I think that I was getting a little burnt out with the business, just kind of like, look, I mean, I hate to say it, it sounds terrible, but like, we always grew Inc. 5,000 every year, but it just didn't feel right. And I started to shift my entrepreneurial mindset to like, I was really about the team and opportunity and like looking 3 to 5 years out. And I had this feeling in my stomach, like, man, if we don't do anything, like it's not going to last forever. And, through serendipity and just weird things, like I had the opportunity to meet Bell Media. That's the company that we partner with, and everything just sort of fell into place. Like what they lacked, we had. What we lacked, they like. It was just this really nice fit, and so it re-engaged and reinvigorated myself and my partner. I think my partner saw me get excited again because for a couple of years, like we got to the point where we had a leadership level, we had some executives, and like things just got like, it kind of got out of control, and we kind of lost touch. And we would always like group back and say, man, like, are you really feeling this right now? Like, I'm not. And we kind of would always find ourselves pulling out and looking at each other and being like, man, things just don't feel right.
It's awesome that you had a relationship that you can do that, right? The ability to stop and go, hey, it's okay to actually question this, and this is a safe environment, right? And be able to do that, because that can scare a lot of business partners. I'm curious, somebody with an entrepreneurial spirit, getting into business is almost easy because you just, you almost probably can't stop yourself. But a $6.5 million company compared to a, $1 million company is usually quite different, right? As a CEO, you're doing different stuff. And I'm curious as to your experience, is part of that burnout or that sense of feeling a bit tired because you find yourself doing stuff or having to spend a lot of time doing things that maybe you are either not your favorite stuff or just, you're just not maybe geared for?
Yeah, the interesting thing that happened to me, like what really changed my life as an entrepreneur, is I joined EO, the entrepreneur organization. And that allowed me to hang out with a lot of like-minded entrepreneurs and just share war stories, and like another safe spot to kind of get feedback and experience shares and that kind of thing. For me, we implemented the EOS, Gino Wickman created this thing, and that changed my life because my life was so chaotic. Like I would always associate like, man, I'm so busy. Or my wife would say, hey, if we're on vacation, like you must get 1,000 emails, right? I'm like, yeah, like I have so many emails and I'm so busy and so important. And then when I implemented EOS into my life, that really created clarity and created a vision for the organization, because, I'm a visionary. I used to look around and think like everybody knows exactly what's going on in my head. I would cause massive organizational whiplash. So I was actually kind of able to find and put myself in the right position. However, in doing that, the trade-off was then it kind of disconnected me from the business. So I had everybody else running the company, and I kind of lost control and lost touch with it. I almost lost reality where, through COVID, I was just like golfing every day. And we had a beautiful office with a lot of people, and there's this energy in our office. And I was going in, pretty much every day just to be around people. Like I need people, I feed off that. And that just went away, completely away. And, and that's where, that's where I think that the EOS strategy and having leaders, like what my role became when I was at the office is, I actually shared this with somebody today. I said, I'm probably the most successful unlicensed therapist in Michigan, because that's what my job was, right? Like I'm just a relationship guy. I care a lot about my team. There's always the manager, teammate relationship. But what I would always do is I never talk about KPI or any of that stuff. Like I'm not in the day-to-day, I'm not in the weeds. It's more like, hey, how are you doing? How's the family? Like what's going on? Just really but genuinely caring and being authentic. Yeah. And then a lot of people would just use me. I would always say, look, if you have to talk to a challenging customer or you're going to deliver a proposal, like use me as a backboard. Like I'll give you my honest feedback, and you can test run me. So COVID and just a screwy time, made us question a lot of things. And it scared me pretty good, because I remember, so we implement EOS, we do level 10 meetings. So every Monday, we share a board, an executive board, and something on there said COVID. And I'm like, click on it, says virus, and we need to talk about this virus that's going to make an impact on the business. And I'm like, yeah, like this is crazy. And then like 2 weeks later, poof, like our office is shut down.
Wow. Yeah.
So, I think as an entrepreneur, like things happen, and, thankfully, like I love change. I can embrace change and I can move fast. But, again, I think it made all of our kind of what do we want to do with this organization come to a head. It forced it. If COVID wouldn't have happened, this whole thing wouldn't have taken place.
Yeah. It's fascinating, isn't it? How sometimes these changes are forced upon us. And ultimately, I think we've all heard the expression that, change is inevitable and it's going to happen. But it's amazing yet how many of us will still lock down, right, and try to avoid it, or, it's rather than perhaps lean into it. So, it's great that you guys were able to turn that into a positive and use it as a positive catalyst for change. And how did you find? Obviously, generally, I think we all had a bit of a COVID experience, and as individuals, but as an organization that's now got 50 odd staff and all the rest of it, did you find that change in an organization that size? It must be different to having 10 people or 5 people, or the two of you, right?
Oh yeah.
What did that look like for the broader organization?
So early on, we had a handful of employees, and then I went through a phase where I think when we hit like 11 people, I went to like 35 within like 6 months. It was insane.
Wow. Yeah.
And it was just fly by the seat of our pants. Our training regiment, lack of, like, it was just bring bodies in. And what I ended up doing is I leased an office that we were like renting a real estate office in a basement. And I remember I met this guy to do my will and trust, and he's looking around and he's looking at me and he's like, this doesn't make any sense. He's like, you got to look at my building down the road. Like, this is, you need to leave here like today. So I'm like, yeah, I'll look at your building. And I pull up to this building, and I was actually with my wife because we were doing our will and trust. And I look at this building and I'm like, holy shit, like this thing's class A. It's just like beautiful. And I'm like, there's no fucking way I'm going to be able to afford this thing. And this is crazy. He's like, nah, come in. And so long story short, the price is shockingly okay. And I'm like, there's this big empty, area. And I go, man, if I can get my sign on this building massive, I go, I'll sign today. He goes, if you can get it past the city, do whatever you want. Yeah. So I leased this massive office, and everybody's like, what are you doing? And it's kind of like, if you build it, they'll come. And and that's kind of what we did. It was just like, put butts in seats. Let's just get aggressive and keep selling and selling. And, I was pretty good until about 12. 35 was chaotic because it was fast. But then once we put EOS and got the right leaders in place, that was great. So that, taken all the way to end of 2020, I think we're at 48, 49. And now fast forward today, we're at 116.
Yeah. Wow.
People, teammates. So it's, and I can tell you, like, from 10 to 11 to 50 that was okay. The 50 to 115 is a completely different ballgame.
Yeah, I can imagine. I'm curious, and there's so many things I'd love to unpack with you here, but going from that sort of growth, hiring an office, doing, I can imagine people saying, what the hell are you doing, right? There's all this risk. And I mean, you must have had a lot of confidence in your ability to sell. You're already doing marketing. So clearly you can generate leads. I'm curious, that must have been fairly systemized, that sales process, to give you the confidence to do that. I mean, is that a fair comment? Like, can you talk to me about what that looked like?
I think from the outside, one would think it was super structured and very process oriented, but being a true sales guy, like I just break process, and being SEO, and like at the time, like a good sales guy never really knew what an outcome would be. Like, so it was kind of the wild, wild west. But I'll tell you, like, I was really confident in my own ability at the time, because when we first started, I was the main sales guy. So I controlled everything. I put a big quota on my own head, and I was like self-sufficient guy. Like, I was really like, let's go, let's drive the company. And really my model for the business was I wanted volume of clients. I didn't want 5 clients to control our destiny. I wanted hundreds of thousands of clients. Yes. And my model was setup fee and monthly reoccurring behind it. Like, that was from day one, that I'm like, you get a setup fee and you get a monthly payment. I don't care if it's $30, like, and that helped us grow the headcount of the team, because as we're adding on 20,000 of reoccurring revenue a month, or whatever that number was at the time, it's like, every time I clip like 10,000, I would hire somebody. Yes. And that was my model, right? Like, I'm not I'm a pretty smart on the financial side, but like it took me 6 years to go to community college. Like, I didn't leave Harvard with an MBA in finance. It was like, just money's coming in, people, and I'm timing trains. Like, I was the finance guy. Like, I did all of it. Yeah. And I think for me, I was just scrappy, not going to give up. And we never took on capital. I mean, my partner and I invested. I mean, all in, we probably invested a couple $100,000 each, like over, reinvesting back. Gotcha. But I mean, we were able to kind of bootstrap this thing and let it grow, and just, based on that reoccurring revenue growing every month, we were just able to, and again, my model was like, look, I mean, as long as the team understands and we're growing, things are good. But if we contract a ton of clients, you can do the math, and we never had to go backwards. In the whole 11 and a half years until we did the deal, we never took a step back.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I hear you talking about your business here, and it's ringing so many little bells for me. We talk a lot about how to build value in a company and prepare yourself for an exit, whatever that exit might look like. And I hear, right business model with recurring revenues, large customer bases, so you're not overly concentrated. Were there any other kind of core factors? And hindsight's a wonderful teacher here too. But were there any other sort of core elements that you think really helped underpin your success?
The technology. The technology was a big one. So, I mean, really, if you look at the valuation of our company and what happened, I always told my partner, John, his name's John Bowerman, and I'm like, we have clients, we have revenue, but the real gem is what's behind the curtain on the technology side. And I'm like, this is the real powerful tool that's worth something. And again, I think at the end of the day, right, because I had a lot of people around me, great friends, great entrepreneurs, some people that were entrepreneurs that are like, you should add a couple zeros to that, or you're crazy, or why are you selling your baby? And I always think it's about whoever's across the table from you, whether it's, a strategic partner is going to be different than private equity or a family office or whomever. And I said, look, when you have an offer in front of you, it's all about, what is this relationship going to mean moving forward? And in our case, we have like-minded entrepreneurs about the same. It's almost like John and I's story. They had the same story, and it was happening in Alabama. So I'm like, that's a different deal than just selling to private equity and saying, I'm out. Yeah. Because I didn't want to be completely out. I'm like, I just want to put some things into place, and like, we can really have some hockey stick growth. And these guys, from a strategic standpoint, had that opportunity. If it would have been private equity, I would have added a couple zeros because I would have been out. But again, I think, technology and also people, like taking me out of the sales process where everything didn't rely on Wes is huge. The systems, the processes. I mean, we had a couple of people look at us close and outside that said, man, you guys run more efficient than some Fortune 500 companies. Awesome. And, we just, simple process from intake to delivery to fulfill, all of that was just so sound. So I think when we started going out there, what when my new strategic partner saw that, they're like, their mind was blown. And it made the transition really, really easy. Again, I think my situation's unique. They're probably all unique, but I mean, it really was this serendipitous way on how we got together and the synergies we have and how powerful we are together. I mean, that's really what solidified this for me, to be honest.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So I'm curious to understand how. So John had mentioned to you, that planted the seed that perhaps for the right money he might be willing to go, and so I guess the subconscious starts working away on maybe there's a deal out there and we're doing this stuff. What did that process look like though, from that kind of inception to eventually Bell coming along? Or I mean, did you go and find them? Did they find you? Was it just great timing? What did that all look like, that process?
For sure. So I up until I probably get reached out to 3 to 5 times a week, like, hey, we want to buy your company, right? Or I've been hired by XYZ private equity firm and we want to talk to you, blah, blah, blah. So literally I'm at home, COVID, I'm just like, I don't know what to do. Like, I've got a COO who's sort of running things and I'm like, I'm just really bored. And all of a sudden I get this email and it's this guy and he said something, blah, blah, like nothing catchy. Just, I want to talk to you about, potentially an exit. And I look at his picture and he kind of looks like Grant Cardone, if you're familiar, 10X.
Yeah,
he's a real loud real estate guy. And he kind of looked like him. And I just finished reading Grant's book and I really liked it. I'm like, So I just replied to this guy.
Yeah.
And, I was like, I'll take a phone call, and I'm talking to him. And I kind of give him like this crazy, like, I don't even want to talk to you unless we're in the realm of here. Right. And he starts laughing at me. And like, all of a sudden we're laughing. And I'm like, man, I kind of like this guy. Most of the time they're kind of, this guy, I'm like, I like him. He was no pressure. And I said, look, I'm not in the market. But again, as an entrepreneur, and we've had the conversation, I'll sell you anything, right? If the price is right.
Yeah.
So I didn't think anything of it. And I, because he was like, okay, yeah, I get it. Like, you're this entrepreneur, you have something important, and you're like, basically told him to go, F himself.
Yeah.
He calls me back in 3 weeks and says, hey, I've got this. There's a guy in Alabama. He's like, you just got to meet him. He's like, I have no strings attached. Well, later did I know he absolutely had this master plan. But he's like, I want you to meet this guy because I had shared. So his name's Todd Taskey, Potomac Capital. Guy was amazing.
Yep.
I told him all my pain points in the business, right? I'm very transparent. I said, here's the 3 things that are bothering me. So he talks to this guy, Scott Bell, like he was already working with Scott to look for a couple of deals. We talk. So me and this guy, Scott, meet on Zoom. It's kind of cool to be in the same industry, share war stories. Like, I love that stuff. I'm a relationship guy. Yeah. There's plenty of business to go around. Like, I could care less and we could share. Long story short, and we just like start talking. And then I forget, like, if I told him like, here are the top 3 things that are bothering me, and he's like, yeah, we implemented this change like 3 years ago and this is what we're doing. And I'm like, holy shit. Like, one of the things I'm talking about with my leadership team was I was going to invest like $1.5 million to really build out our sales intake process. And that money was going to come from my pocket and John's pocket or raise capital. And that's a lot of money. COVID, I'm like, man, should we be investing all this money right now? And the world's going to blow up. And so there's some other things happening. And so Scott Bell's super professional, buttoned up. And the whole time I'm watching this guy, I'm like, holy shit. Like, this is a guy that really wants to be a CEO and he's doing a good job. Like, he had created his company 4 years after I did, and they were almost double the revenue to a certain degree. And I was like kind of fascinated about that.
Yeah.
So I'm starting to like look at him and size him up. And then I meet his COO and I'm like, wow, like this guy's great. Like, he's everything in a COO that I've ever wanted. And Scott started to dump on me some of their challenges. And as I'm listening to that, I'm like, I've got all this stuff that we've done. Like, we've already done it. And we have some cool technology because they were operating without a CTO or a big technology component. They were relying on third party and resources. And I'm like, that's nuts in this space because you got to have a John, because when shit hits the fan, like you got to have people in your foxhole that you can count. So it was this really weird, like, okay, there's like some interest, and it kind of went on. And
did you guys have advisors at that point, or was it just, founder to founder kind of?
It was founder to founder, right? And then obviously after, so Todd's like, so how'd it go? It's kind of like, my mom, if I went on a date in high school or something, like, so what do you think? And I'm like, yeah, interesting. I said, I'm not budging on I was like, I don't even know what this means, but, still kind of gave him this number. we keep the conversation going. And then all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? Like, I never thought about like a strategic, like what would this actually look like? And then I started like building models in my head and I'm like, holy shit.
So
Like,
I got to ask you then, I'm sorry to cut across you there, but you had a number in your head. Did you just pick a really big number, or did you have a methodology? Was it a multiple of EBITDA or something like that? Like how did you come up with the number?
So I always just had in the back of my mind, right, like a 10x multiplier. I mean, I would go 15 because our technology is great. Like that's like any entrepreneur, right? But being realistic, I had a number in my head because I'm 40 years old. I have 4 kids. I've been married for 15 years. So I've always had this number where obviously if I could generate enough revenue, in a savings or stocks that can produce a certain amount of income where I don't have to worry about anything, that was always the number, because it's just now I'm safe and now I can just go freaking nuts, right?
Yeah, of course.
And what I did is I kind of backed off that a little bit because I was like, look, I was 39 at the time. I just turned 40 in July. And I'm like, I still want to stay really hungry. Like, I don't want to like sit in my robe for the next 5 years or just like lose my passion. And, not that I would, but I started creating weird things in my head. So, I was able to kind of put something together. So when my partner came to me, he gave me a number. He said a number and I said, okay. And I'm like, look, I have a fiduciary. I said, next to your wife, like we have the closest relationship. And I felt this like overwhelming sense of, I want to get him a deal and I'm going to get a deal and we're going to do this together. And I'm going to fight and get him the exact same thing. So what we designed was, taking some chips off the table, consolidating and continuing using high level marketing. And that number he spit out, I hit that number. Yeah, and, awesome. It was just a good, like, we were able to look at each other and I'll remember like we had a drink the day we closed the deal. And it was just like this sigh of relief from the both of us. Cause we looked at each other and we're like, we no longer have a fiduciary responsibility to any of it. And it was, it got hard, right? I mean, we've got some people in our organization making a lot of money. And as we grew and like, on the outside, we're making all this money, but like, we're comping the team and putting huge bonuses and we have executives making all this money. And we look at each other, we're like, what the hell are we like? What do we do? Like we've lost reality here. So that whole sigh of like, we no longer had any debt, no active credit card that's being billed $100,000 every month on God knows, like, it's just, that's all gone. And like that weight off our shoulders was like, now we have this sum of money, all this weight's off our shoulders. And now we have this opportunity to really do what we want with the company. That's what we wanted to do since day one. And we were both like, looked at each other like, I'm as excited as the first month we were in business. Like I'm like alive. So it was, like I said, I mean, I think that, you kind of create your own happiness. And I think in this, it was a lot of wins, right? I think for me, like it was really me. I had to move from the current state I was in to find happiness again.
Yeah, nice. That's cool. It's funny how growth and exit are often just flip sides of the same coin, right? Like you're dancing the same stuff. It's and it sounds like you've really nailed the right partnership. So congrats on that. How long did the process take from you've had a first chat with Bell, to the day you signed, you had that drink with John?
Yeah. So like, I think I started talking in September.
Yeah.
I signed a LOI, the letter of intent, at the end of October, and we closed the deal at the end of February. We went fast.
Yeah. No,
so
that is pretty quick.
Yeah. The goal was, so their fiscal year ended January 1. So we wanted to like, and again, we have a lot of clients. They have a lot of clients. We want to get everything in order. And it was like, once that LOI was signed, I'm like, the main focus was like, let's go, like, let's just get this done as fast as we can. And I think they too, on their end, like, it's kind of like fishing, right? I think this was a wild experience. I mean, I was 2 or 3 times like this close from walking away from the deal entirely, just because things change. And, it really got us to really understand each other on both sides of the table. And it was actually a really great experience because I got to learn about these guys and how, like, when situational things happen and how they react. And it was really great. But there was just some things where, like, they were stuck on and we're stuck on. I'm like, hey, like, I'll walk away. And That's where Todd Taskey from Potomac Capital, I said, you're like a master angler, like a fisherman, aren't you? And he's like laughing. He's like, why? I'm like, because you reel me in right to that boat, but when I start tugging away, like, when to let the line out. Because it almost snapped multiple times, So I give a hat off to him because, it was an very emotional process. I mean, you got feelings of, man, I mean, I went some days questioning my own ability, to like depression, to like, why am I doing this? And what's my identity? Like, you name it, I experienced it. But now I'm 7 months past, and it's like, I look back and it's amazing. And like what we've been able to do and where we're at, it's like, I'm so happy with the outcome.
Man, I so relate to what you're talking about there. These ups and downs in deals, there's so many things that can cause a deal to fail, right? And that emotional roller coaster that people go on, and and deal fatigue. Deal fatigue is a real thing. People just get over it after a while. It's like, hey, if we can't get a deal done now, I'm out. I'm done. And so it's great that you were able to kind of navigate that, and clearly there was enough connection and bond and value and similar values as individuals for you to make that work. So
one of the things that happened, I don't know if I ever told the new CEO, Scott Bell, this. I might have mentioned it in a podcast. It got to a point where, like, look, I'm a fast guy, meaning like, if I want to buy a new iPhone, like, I'll buy it right now, overnight it tomorrow, and we're good to go. Like, I'm not thinking twice about it. And that's just how I live my life. And it got to a point where I was like, getting some cold feet and like a lot of emotions around it. And they were like really pressing me to, like, I think it was sign the LOI or do something specific. And I'm like, look, like I'm this close from walking away. And I told Todd, I said, you need to give me 2 weeks, because this is a big decision that affects a lot of things and a lot of people. Give me 2 weeks, because I want to take the time, make sure I'm thinking clearly. And he's like, if you take 2 weeks, they're out, they're done. And I said, 2 weeks. And I go, it's 11 and a half years. I said, if that's how they react, fine. Yeah. Long story short, I get a phone call a couple hours later, and it's Scott, right? So this is the original guy I met, the CEO. And he's like, hey, he goes, I just want to let you know, I get what you're going through. Take as much time as you need. This is a big decision. And like that phone call we had, I'm like, this is a dude that we can take over the digital marketing world together. Like, because I look at him as I'm transitioning out of the CEO role for him to be the CEO. And when I work with people, it's like, it's like we're on a football team. Like, I'm going to block and tackle and knock guys' heads off for you. And, when he made that call, it made it real. It made everything like, you know what? This is exactly who I want to partner with. And that changed the whole thing. I mean, and again, it was that close from snapping the line to, fully back engaged. It's pretty wild. It's a wild emotion. Sure.
Yeah. No, it's a fabulous insight, because I think I've seen deals fail because people's egos get involved, and whether it's one party or the other, or quite frankly, sometimes the advisors, or the lawyer or someone, thinks that they've got to be the hero of the moment and they're going to throw down. And it's right. At the end of the day, deals get done between willing buyer, willing seller, who can form a lot of trust in a short period of time. And I think the only way you do that is actually acknowledge the human part of it, right? It's reasonable people being reasonable. So that's a very, very cool story, and I really, really appreciate you sharing that with us. And I imagine too what you were saying before about that weight of being the owner coming off. I bet you now you just got that much more capacity to be awesome at what you do.
It's like I can't even describe it. It's just it's all a mindset. And it's just, not that I need a parachute behind me. It's just, I feel victorious for what we're able to do to this point. And I'm a big milestone guy. Like, I used to be really big on like creating goals and, checking the box, but now I'm really about like, it's called the iterative mindset, about just like putting in the work and not really caring as much about the goal. Just make sure you're doing the right things. And I'm in this really good, healthy, family, business, life balance. And, I have 4 kids. I turned 40. Like, it's just like all good. It's finally like I feel pretty balanced and rounded out, which is kind of what I'm shooting for, right? I'm, because for a while it's just like, I mean, and listeners know, like, being an entrepreneur, it's lonely. It's not super sexy. It's hard. It's so that victory was like, man, like we can do anything now. And now it's like, what's crazy is like, he and I, like, there's so many things that we wanted to do, but we were always at max capacity. We couldn't do anything. And the whole goal is like, now we have 50 people we're going to add on to our team with a bunch of smart leaders and executive. Like, now we have the ability to really do what we want to do. And I was really big on the people. I mean, my thing was, I kind of felt that I was limiting our own team for like growth, and people want to grow and do different things. And I felt that by doing this and creating this opportunity now now we have 118 employees, like that's a big opportunity for some of my early adopters. And I said, look, like, how cool is it to be part of the story of, we did 6.5 million. And now in 2021, we're now 118 strong, and we're going to do 21 million in revenue. Like, that's a big deal. Cause in my space, you have some companies that do several $100 million, or you have small boutique companies that do less than $1 million. And we're sort of in that middle space where we can still move fast and execute and do really great work. So that was exciting for me too, is like giving the teammates that are really bought into high level marketing, like that next elevated opportunity for them to take and run with.
They've come on the journey too, right? They're all evolving as humans as well as employees. It's brilliant.
And the crazy thing about it was, I remember getting in front, and this is all through Zoom, because this is like right in the mix of COVID. I got in front of every department with their manager when they did their weekly meeting. And my reservation or hesitation, like, I had a lot of anxiety around, like, how is this person going to react? And quite frankly, the people I thought that were going to react negatively react very positive. And the ones that I thought were going to be very positive, it was the opposite. It was really bizarre. But it was like such a great feeling to get the feedback, because there were some people that said, I trust you. Like, I feel it, like how you're talking about it and how convicted you are. And I've always been a very authentic and just a very, like, as a leader, like, I'm just transparent. And, it all just came full circle. And, not everybody was on board. I mean, there were some people that like, hey, why'd you blow up a great thing? But little do they know, like, at the pit of my stomach, I didn't have the greatest feeling about what was coming in 12 to 24 months if we didn't do anything. So,
yeah. And that's the lonely stuff you can't share with everyone, right?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. Wes, I'm cognizant of time, but I really appreciate you coming on the show and sharing this story. I just think there's so many people out there, we love helping business owners, we truly believe they're the ones who change the world. And I just know there's a lot of people on their journey who we either at the beginning of that sort of story, or maybe even towards the end of it, and sort of having the thoughts about, do I sell, do I partner, what do I do next? And, I just think sharing and hearing your story is going to help a lot of people sort of start to conceptualize, maybe put a bit of a framework around some things they need to look at. So, man, thank you very much for coming on and sharing that.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, that's the one thing I love about what I did is, I think that a lot of entrepreneurs are thinking about it, and the fact that I pulled the trigger and did it and have, real emotions around it, and the pre to the post. And, I love helping other entrepreneurs and being a backboard, because, being part of entrepreneur organization, like, one of their philosophies is like, you can't tell people what's good for them. All you can do is offer your own experience. And I think that experience and shares are how I learn from other people, and just say, hey, like, how did you do this? Or what would you do if you were presented with this, challenge? And I just love entrepreneurs, regardless of the widget or like their journey is just fascinating to me, because it's every little, detail affects your decision-making and your thought process. And
For sure. I can certainly relate to that. And I think too, and obviously what we're trying to do even on this show, and like EO and all the rest of it, is that I think it's too easy for people to see the media, or they hear from people and, Bob started a business. Bob, added water to the recipe, and presto, he sold for $50 million. And everyone goes, well, that all just sounds so easy. But really, there's, it's all the trials and tribulations and emotional roller coasters that you don't sometimes hear about. And so I think it can leave business owners wondering, what's wrong with me? Why am I going through all this drama? Well, actually, they went through their drama as well, right? They've just managed to come out the other side, and they've got a story to tell. So it's, hopefully people will hear your story, and it'll help them on their journey. So once again, thanks for making the time.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you so much.